welcome to the Mental Music Podcast, a podcast made for teens by teens, exploring mental health from our perspective. My name's Gordon.
My name's Tom.
And this episode we'll be having an interview with Corinne Coe. She discusses anxiety and depression.
Now, viewer discretion, we may have some foul language, but
May?
Yeah, well, I doubt that will happen this episode.
Oh,
I don't know, I just have a feeling.
We'll see.
But there may or may not be some inappropriate language. Also, please do not get offended by anything that we say, as we are just two teenagers behind a microphone.
That's a kind request.
It is a kind request, but...
as always, we aren't trained professionals, and anything we do so should not be considered a replacement for professional medical advice. So please do enjoy. We have a song up next, and we'll get on to the interview.
Wish I could read your mind now. Wish I could tell you how I feel, but how? To me, you are like the sun. I need you to make my day bright. Loving you is my addiction. Can't get you out of my mind. Do you feel the same way? Telling you don't ever change, 'cause you the way you are. You're my boo, you're my only, my everything, my baby. So sitting on the rooftop crying doesn't look like I'm trying. You better tell me in the end that you're worth fighting for. Tell the real story, why aren't you with me? How can I describe you? I'm lost in the sea. Imagine the winter without the snow. Picture reality, it's me alone, though. It's not a real story, why aren't you with me? How can I describe you? I'm lost in the sea. Imagine the winter
So welcome back. Today, as said before, our topic is depression and anxiety. Today we've done a recording of
An interview with.
Sorry. Yeah, so we did an interview with a psychologist called whose name is Corinne Ko, and she is a psychologist located in
Cleveland.
in Brisbane.
Down south.
And she was good fun to have on during the interview.
We had a half-hour session afterwards.
Yeah, we had about half an hour.
The flaws in the education system.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun to do that. A good person.
Okay.
So during our interview, I touched on. Well, I didn't touch on. Well, I asked her what a psychologist is and what a psychologist does and how they can help you.
Yeah.
Which you'll be hearing in a later episode, which I do not know the name of, but you'll be hearing that in a later episode.
It'll come out in the next few weeks because it's a broad topic, psychology, and there are lots of things to cover over several episodes. Speaking of which, depression and anxiety, also very broad topics. We'll likely be seeing some more episodes based on that in the next few weeks.
Yeah, so in the next segment, it will be the other half of the interview with Corinne Ko.
Yep.
Which isn't about psychologists, but it's about the depression and anxiety itself. And it'll basically be answering questions about what depression and anxiety is, how it can affect you,
and how it can be dealt with.
The symptoms that may follow from it.
So yeah, I mean, we hope you enjoyed the interview, and if you want to hear some more from Corinne Ko, she has a book that she released.
She has a book here which we managed to get a copy of.
What's it called? It's called Heal Your Mind, Heal Your Mind, Heal Your Life, and she released it. Well, this edition was released in 2016. Well, the one I have in my hands right now. It's available at www.corinneco.com.au.
Now, I haven't had a chance to read through this, but I probably will later.
He's had a glance.
Yeah, I've had a glance of it. It's actually really good. It has quite a lot of stuff in here that I can see already is quite helpful. And so, we hope...
She's a great person, and we hope you enjoy it as much as we did.
Taylor about the fucking flex.
You're just like my ex. You're just like my ex. I've been there, I've done that. You're just like the last one. Said you call me back, but never call me back. Said you gon' do this, but end up doing that. You bring out my worst behavior. One more way, I know you're just like my ex. Just like my ex.
You said hearing my voice was a getaway. Now when you hear my voice, it's your signal to get away. You said you wanted me, but now I'm told to stay away. I said okay, knowing it'll only be a day. But you were serious, you said you couldn't deal with me. I asked you why and you told me I was in your way. I apologize for being the real thing. I put you first, gave you what you wanted, but you turned away. Feeling like I'm 47, just got shot by an AK-47 on the top. Wishing I was now in heaven, but you only struck my heart, not my head. You told me you couldn't do this, but then proceeded to do that. Oh, you kinda threw me in the piss, the one that does pay your paycheck. You made me realize I don't need your lies. You were the star, now I gotta get a raincoat. Gotta let the haters drag, gotta solo tango. Have to be persistent if you wanna see a rainbow. If you don't, you're just gonna fall into your shadow.
You're just like my ex. You're just like my ex. I've been there, I've done that. You're just like the last one. Said you call me back, but never call me back. Said you gon' do this, but end up doing that. You bring out my worst behavior. One more way, I know you're just like my ex.
stole my time, you took it off my wrist. You put in your pocket, you ran with it. My wallet and my time is not chasing it. I gotta move fast, running out of time. If I don't catch it, I'm gonna lose my time. If I lose my time, I'm gonna lose my mind. Speeding too fast, I'm gonna get a fine. But right then I came to my senses. My time is only worth it if it's mine. As an example, my exes. My time revolved around being told lies. Time to burn all of these pictures. To erase the memory of these times. You're turning me off now like switches. This is the story of my ex-life.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hey, I just wanted to let you know that,
You're just like my ex. You're just like my ex. Been there, I've done that. You're just like the last one. Said you call me back, but never call me back. Said you gon' do this, but end up doing that. You bring out my worst behavior. One more way, I know you're just like my ex. You're just like my ex.
What is depression, and like what symptoms would you have
Yeah.
from
Well, depression is okay. So the most common symptoms of depression are loss of pleasure, loss of interest. So basically feeling numb, and loss of like constant sadness. So there's a difference between feeling just sad and feeling depressed. When you're feeling depressed, it's pretty much feeling down all day, every day for more than 2 weeks. Including the other symptoms are pretty much problems with sleeping, appetite. You either have an increased appetite or loss of appetite. Energy levels become really, really low. Concentration and memory are the main symptoms that do handicap people, whether it be in schooling. Concentrating becomes so low that people actually lose their confidence because the symptoms actually cause them to not be able to function as at the level that they're wanting to function. So that's the symptoms of depression. And what causes depression is anything that causes you to feel trapped. So staying within your comfort zone.
Right. Yeah, I can see that.
And that could be anything. Could be bullying. Could be self-esteem issues, or anything like, say, back injury or any limitations. So anything that actually
Anything that kind of keeps you back from doing those things that you want to do.
Yeah. Whereas the difference between depression and anxiety is fear-based. So anything that you're scared of. So coming out of your comfort zone and worrying about failing and worrying about rejection is what causes anxiety.
I was going to ask, how could having depression affect a life of an adolescent? But I think you summed it up there before with, like, it can affect how your schooling life goes and how you interact with people, and kind of just muddle everything up for you.
Yeah, well, that's right.
What are some things that could cause depression? Like you said before, the things that are keeping you back from doing those things you want. But are there any other subjects around it?
Yeah, well, what I've actually noticed in the last 20 years that I've actually been treating people for depression, anxiety, and that's adolescents, children, and adults, the main common denominator is self-esteem. So someone, because there's a difference between being confident and having self-esteem. Confidence is pretty much being confident in a particular skill. So you might have social confidence, but that doesn't mean to say you've got a strong self-esteem. And it could even be just that you're confident in your schoolwork, confident in playing an instrument or whatever, but when it comes to self-esteem, it's pretty much how you measure yourself as a whole compared to other people. So when your self-esteem is critically low, what happens is that you have a fear of rejection and fear of failure because you don't feel like you actually are worthy enough of other people's acceptance. So what people tend to do is either over please or avoid. as a way of coping. So, and this is also then connected to drug use and alcohol abuse, because that's what people will rely on to cope with anxiety and depression.
Yeah, if someone, if an adolescent thought they were experiencing depression, what are some things they should do? You said before to go visit a GP so that they can get to a therapist.
Yeah.
But what are some things that they could do outside of that?
I think the problem with adolescents seeking help is because they, first of all, they don't quite understand what's going on, and if you don't understand what the problem is, then you don't know what the solution is. And so understanding the symptoms, and there's a lot of checklists and tests that you can actually take, not necessarily psychological tests, but checklists on symptoms. And if they actually meet most of those symptoms, the best advice that I can give is for them to go and visit their GPs, let them know that they're experiencing these symptoms, and then from there just asking for a mental health plan to go and see a psychologist. And it might even be that you go and see a psychologist for the first session, and if it doesn't feel comfortable, you don't can't relate to that person, or you don't feel like it's you're not committed to it, but at least try to go and see a psychologist, because they will actually be able to tell you in that one session what the treatment plan would involve, and the steps needed to get out of depression. And I think the problem too is that people don't understand that depression is treatable, and so is anxiety. And so when you hear things like, oh, it's a chemical imbalance in the brain, then what happens is that people assume that, oh, well, that's it, I've got to live with it for the rest of my life, when in actual fact it isn't. That's not the case. It's about correcting your thinking, because it's your mind that controls what chemicals your brain releases. So if you're thinking negatively, then obviously your brain's just not going to release happy hormones, because you're not happy. So then what's going to happen is that your body's going to experience all these negative chemicals that are just going to make you feel horrible, and experiencing those symptoms that I just described as depression.
If someone actually had depression, they knew they do, should they go and see professional help straight away?
Yes, because I guess the limitations that depression causes depends on how resilient the person is. So sometimes you might have moderate symptoms, and and someone might sort of be suffering a lot more from the depression than somebody else who's got extreme severe depression. So, and this is the thing too, is that with suicidal thoughts, that is one, you'll only start to notice suicidal thoughts and even death wishes when you're experiencing moderate to severe depression, not in the mild stage. So that's quite rare to experience suicide thoughts and death wishes on in the mild stage. So when when you're experiencing suicidal thoughts, then what happens, unfortunately, that plan keeps going over and over and over in your head. And if you think that that's the only solution, then as the plan becomes more and more reinforced in your head, that's when people then take that step of suiciding. So if you're actually going and see a therapist in the early stages, then you might come into the session saying you've got suicidal thoughts, but it's not really that reinforced, so you've got a chance to actually,
GTFO. Chance to get out.
Yeah,
Chance
exactly.
to get out before it hits you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before you were mentioning some symptoms of depression and such, if a friend of yours was suffering depression, what should you do for them? What should you try and help them? How would you do that?
I think the more we educate ourselves about depression and mental illness and the symptoms, I think the more we can actually help, people. And I think the problem is that without understanding depression and thinking it's something you can actually just shake off and, just get on with it, is something that's probably the worst advice you can actually give a friend. Because if they're coming out and saying that, they're feeling negative and they're feeling down all the time, yes, okay, you can cheer them up, but that's a temporary thing. What they're trying to do is reach out to say, hey, I don't know what's going on. I'm feeling depressed, feeling, not coping with it. But unfortunately, if you don't know what to say or do, then, you can only help them as much as you can. So probably if you don't understand mental health, depression, anxiety, then I would probably just advise them to go and let a parent know if they feel comfortable to let their parents know. Sometimes, unfortunately, home environment isn't that healthy, and so they don't have anyone to turn to other than their friends. They're a bit concerned about going to school counsellors sometimes, because sometimes school counsellors may not have the time, or they don't have. There might be a teacher as well, so the part-time teacher. So it's not easy to access that. So going to friends and then getting maybe friends to advise them to go and see their GP, because that's the first point of help, is to go and see a GP. And yeah,
that's good. Are there any ways that you can deal with sudden swings of depression in just an ordinary situation on a day-to-day life?
It's pretty hard, because once you've because unfortunately, if you have depression, then you already have a negative approach. And most of those negative thoughts come from, again, self-esteem. So putting yourself down. You might be misinterpreting a lot of stuff that's going on. So if someone's not wanting to hang out with you, you might sort of assume it's, rejection, rather than it's because they're probably busy, or, so there's a lot of misinterpretation. And there's also, it's just really, really hard for them to,
It's just hard for them to cope with things.
Yeah, it is. It's hard. It's really hard to cope with depression on your own, because as much as you want to try to shake it off and to be positive, what happens is that you're more likely to put on an act for your friends, which then unfortunately gives the impression that you're coping a lot better than what you are. And then all of a sudden, someone, if they suicide, it's like a shock, because they were happy, they were joking, they were mucking around, and I don't understand why. And that's the sort of the sort of stuff that you don't want to be doing. So, but then at the same time, you don't, because they don't want to be constantly pull the mood down in the group, around their friends. So they don't want to be always the one that's the burden and the one that's always negative. So, like I said, it's a bit hard for them to sort of do anything to help themselves, except to maybe read up a lot more on depression. There's a lot of things on Instagram and support groups that they can actually just read up. There's information out there, but unfortunately it's just about trying to find the information, online. There's heaps of blogs and that about, how to help themselves and that. But
So some things on anxiety, which I mentioned before, but I forgot to actually ask anything about. How similar to depression would it be?
Sometimes anxiety does cause depression, because when you experience anxiety attacks, then what happens is that it forces you to stay within your comfort zone. So you're not really going to get much out of life. You're going to find it uncomfortable to socialise. You're going to find it uncomfortable to, just get a job. Anything that you want to do, you're going to experience a lot of anxiety attacks. So that's one of the reasons why it causes depression, because you're basically, shutting your life down pretty much. And so you're not really living or growing as a person, or meeting your potential.
What are some things that could... What are some things that could cause anxiety? I think we did an episode a while ago on phobias, and there was actually this interesting one called trypophobia, where it's like weird indifferent patterns, like the middle of a lotus flower, for example, and that triggers anxiety for some people. So that's a very vague example, but what are some other things that could cause anxiety?
Most of the time with anxiety, I think you're just going to differentiate, first of all, there is generalized anxiety, which is pretty much someone experiencing anxiety most of the time, on a daily basis, all day in general. But then there's also panic attacks, which is, like, say, anxiety attack, also known as anxiety attack. So when you have what causes both of those is pretty much like expecting the worst case scenario. So when you have when you actually sort of worry about something that's going to happen, whether it's actually realistic or not, then your body just starts to prepare you to deal with that. And so what it actually does to prepare you to deal with the whatever you think is going to be the worst case scenario, it forces you to release adrenaline. And when you release a lot of adrenaline, that's what causes the symptoms of anxiety. So that's where you'll get the palpitations, pounding heart, feeling nauseous. You even get that choking sensation where, you know, it's not that you're choking, it's just the muscles around your neck become firm. And because, you know, every single time like adrenaline goes through your body, every single muscle in your body becomes tense. So when you're feeling nauseous, it's because the stomach muscles are spasming, and that's what is causing that nausea. So as soon as you actually worry about something that's going to go wrong, so you might be worried about getting into trouble or worrying about being bullied or whatever it might be, then your brain automatically wants to prepare you to deal with it. So it releases a lot of adrenaline. You get those symptoms because nothing's really happening for you to be using that extra fuel. So if you're actually in a fight or something...
Sorry, I've been sick for a while, so I'm just coughing a bit. Sorry about that. Sorry, keep on going.
Yeah. So when you, if you expect something to go wrong, but then it doesn't. So if you were going to go into, if you think there was going to be a fight, but it doesn't happen, then all that adrenaline that's released is just going to free float in your system. So it's not going to be used up. But if you're actually going into a fight, then that adrenaline would be useful in helping you to, deal with that situation a lot better. That's what adrenaline's meant to do. So whenever you're in an exam, for example, when you actually release a little bit of adrenaline, that's going to make you feel to perform a lot better because it's making you more alert. So that's what the role of adrenaline is supposed to do, is to help you. But the problem is that when you experience a lot of adrenaline, but there's nothing that is happening, it's all in your head, because you actually are assuming that something's going on and it's not really happening, then it's just going to sit in your system and it's going to make you feel uncomfortable, basically. And so people get scared of those symptoms. They get scared of, the heart racing, thinking and getting the tight chest and thinking they're having a heart attack, when in actual fact it's just an anxiety symptoms because of adrenaline.
So if someone just started having a panic attack, or they were like getting shots of adrenaline from their brain just in the middle of tests or something, how would you deal with that?
Well, this is exactly what a mental block in an exam is, because I remember having a few of those at uni, where you actually sort of like suddenly, you can't even read the questions because there's been too much adrenaline being released, and it's only like when you actually sort of like calm yourself down for a few seconds, that adrenaline just drops down, and then you can get stuck into your test.
It's like that adrenaline comes on, your brain switches off, your body switches on, just
Yeah, exactly, So just what to do is pretty much, if you can, it's hard because like when anxiety gets into the severe stage, when it's actually in severe panic attack, there's not much you can actually do except just let it, like wait it out. And a lot of people need to understand that the symptoms are not dangerous, they're just normal symptoms that every single human being experiences. The only problem is that what's not normal is the negative thought, worrying about something that's not really happening. So that's what's triggering the anxiety. But to manage the symptoms in the mild stage before it actually gets worse, the best thing to do is to do some deep, slow, controlled breathing. Because when you're actually doing deep, slow breathing, what you're doing is you're sending the message to your brain that you want to relax, you don't need to be on guard, you don't need to fight anything or run away from anything. So what it actually does, it turns the tap off adrenaline, and it actually opens a tap of dopamine and relaxing hormones, which when that gets released into your system, every single muscle in your body just becomes very relaxed, and so you're less likely to experience a severe panic attack. So anyone going to school, for example, that starts to get tense, if you can do your controlled slow breathing all the way throughout the day, then you're more likely to keep the adrenaline low and less likely to experience an anxiety attack, because one of the biggest fears is panicking about having a panic attack. So
I think, that's interesting to think about. Panicking about having a panic attack. Yeah. Other than, like, if you know that you kind of have these panic attacks semi-regularly or something, or like you know that these things will happen to you, are there ways to kind of, I guess, train your body beforehand in your spare time to like stop yourself from having those things? Like myself, occasionally I'll have a little bit of meditation that kind of just keeps my body cool and stuff.
Yeah.
Are there like things that can help, such as meditation, for example?
Yeah, there's two parts to like there's managing the symptoms. So the like you were saying with the meditation, taking your mind, off, scanning your body and what's happening within your body. So maybe a distraction could even be, and this is the reason why a lot of adolescents go and do gaming, because it's a distraction from what's going on and just relaxes them. But with the other thing too is that to manage the symptoms, it's a first stage, which control breathing. So controlling your breathing all the time, because what you've got to understand is that if you're anxious, that means that you're always thinking of the worst case scenario. So if you're thinking of the worst case scenario, then your mind is always active. So the more active your mind is and over analyzing, the more adrenaline it constantly has to release. And adrenaline, when you've got too much adrenaline, it actually just exhausts you. So you feel like sleeping, you just don't want, you lose that energy. So one of the things that you want to do is to manage the amount of adrenaline that your brain releases, like I was saying earlier, which is doing controlled breathing, meditation, distraction. But the part that you really, to get rid of anxiety completely, you really need to address the catastrophic thinking, like the what if this happens, and what if, like always worrying about the worst case scenario. And to do that, you have to go and see a psychologist, because it's not that easy to just change, your thinking to address that.
There was a line from a poem which I think would be really good in this situation, but I can't remember what it is at the moment. I'll have to find that later. But if someone... No, that's not what I want to say. Hang on. There we go. Would sleep deprivation be a cause? Like, would it contribute to, like, would getting more sleep help to maintain healthy levels of not having anxiety or panic attacks?
Well, I think sleep and nutrition would definitely help. I mean, I'm actually going to be doing a talk on mood and food, and because it does actually help. By eating the healthy nutritional food, you are going to sort of create the right hormones and chemicals that you need. But at the same time with sleep, that does actually help as well. The only problem is that people with anxiety aren't able to get to sleep, because as soon as they stop the distraction throughout the day and they try to sleep, their mind starts to race and starts to think about all the negative stuff that might have happened in the day, or things that they're worrying about that are going to happen, the next day. And so switching your mind off is going to be a lot hard, to do, to get enough sleep. But yeah, if you can control that, then that would actually definitely help. One of the things that you can actually do to try and get some sleep is, again, doing the controlled breathing an hour before you go to bed. So try to set, I guess, a time to go to bed at the same time, and then 1 hour beforehand, just doing deep controlled breathing all the way through, and that'll actually help to release the right hormones to relax and get to sleep.
I know I don't really do it anymore, but something that does actually help to go to sleep, because it distracts your mind and it allows you to, it makes you tired as it distracts your mind, so it kind of gets you to go to sleep easier, is reading a book.
Yes.
Reading a book. I know, I think I've done it a couple times, but I've actually been reading a book as I'm going to sleep and fallen asleep with the book in my face, which is a good thing, because that it's telling me that my brain was it was calming down, it was relaxing, and it was shutting off, as well as it being distracted at the same time, which is better than if you were on your phone, because that actually keeps you awake more.
Yeah, the difference is that, if you're going to be reading a book that, say, I don't know, Who Did It, that gets your mind thinking, that's the worst thing to read before bed. And this is the reason why relying on your phone and all that, when what you're doing is you're keeping your mind active. So because you're thinking, problem solving, analysing. So that's what's going to constantly keep the adrenaline flowing instead of relaxing hormones to be able to get to sleep. So if you're reading a book that's not really too stimulating, then you're more likely to sort of it's a distraction, but then you're more likely to fall asleep.
Yeah. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Well, it was great having you here today. It was a pleasure to meet you and to have you in here for this recording that I am now stumbling with my words and just saying whatever comes to mind first. But yeah, no, it was good to have you here on Mental Music. We'll have a quick break. Straight. It was thank you for having. It was good. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
For coming.
No, thank you for
And we'll see you
inviting me.
later.
Thanks.
I like to play hard to get. If you haven't figured me out yet, if thorns are all that's left, would you wait around for the roses? I'm a Sunday driving your red Ferrari. I'm a strong denial when I know you've got me. If I say it's nothing while I'm blushing, there's a pretty good chance it's something. One of those head in the clouds, lost in everything except what I'm supposed to be thinking about. But right now, I'm not playing it cool, but you see right through, yeah. I guess I'm busted. You caught me crushing. My finger pass you a note, or I could slip it into your locker. Pretend like I don't know about the hints that I keep dropping. I'm the New York to your city lights, to the football, to your Friday night. If I say it's nothing while I'm blushing, there's a pretty good chance it's something. One of those head in the clouds, lost in everything except what I'm supposed to be thinking about. But right now, I'm not playing it cool, but you see right through, yeah. I guess I'm busted. You caught me crushing. C to the R to the USH. Come on, boy, what you gonna say? You better step up or you're gonna get dumped. If I say it's nothing while I'm blushing, there's a pretty good chance it's something. One of those head in the clouds, lost in everything except what I'm supposed to be thinking about. But right now, I'm not playing it cool, but you see right through, yeah. I guess I'm busted. You caught me crushing. You caught me crushing. You caught me crushing.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. If you liked us, make sure to check us out on Mental Music Pod. You can find all our social medias under that. And on the book that we touched on earlier, Corin Coe's book, Heal Your Mind, Heal Your Life.
Yeah, we forgot to mention before. Heal Your Mind, Heal Your Life is a depression and anxiety self-help book.
That's it.
Yeah. So this is if you want to get this, it would actually be quite good for you.
It's like advice written by a professional
Hmm.
for teenagers like us and even young adults. So yeah, check that out at www.corinco.com.au.
Yeah, if you want to get a copy
If you
of
want a
that. You can also get it on Amazon as well. You can get it as an
sure.
ebook, I
That's it.
believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you for listening to today's episode.
You can find our songs in the description. And yeah, if you have any music of your own, feel free to send it to us. And there's something we wanted to add new this week. If you have any questions, Corin Coe said that
Yeah, I was about to.
she'd be happy to
about to
answer
get
any.
on
So
that.
chuck us an email and we'll send them to her, and we'll get them back in the next episode.
Now, another thing is, if you'd like to check out Corinne Co a little bit, she does in fact have a YouTube channel, which I don't know if
It's called it's Corinne Co.
Yeah, it's Corinne Co.
Yeah,
You
2
can, if you
videos on it.
search
It's
it up,
pretty good.
if you search it up, it should be fine. You should be able to find it pretty easy.
She also has an Instagram.
Yeah, she has an Instagram and Facebook, which we'll try and link.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll try and put a link out for that. But yeah.
I mean, it's great. I mean, we're always looking for new interviewees. So even if you have any stories, don't have to have professional experience. Just stories really interest us, really interest whoever's listening.
If you
so
want to
feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah,
and
if you want to send a story in to
come
us
on
or
the show.
questions, would we be able to get them?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, that's cool. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up for
Wraps up
today.
for today. Yeah. So cheers for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
See you next time.